right, so this is to Hythloday, an answer to his answer to me, uh, which was an answer to him, or whatever, however that started. Okay, well, you brought up the backlash. I think that's a separate issue. I always find this entertaining, and I suppose uh, I mean, I don't know that I'm surprised, but I am sort of I was unaware of the depth of the reaction. The thing is that, as I showed with my video from 2008, I have addressed this issue for years, and my thoughts on this are, from. I mean, I've continued to evolve my thoughts, but I mean, basically, they're similar. The framework definitely is the same from long before I got on YouTube. And furthermore, I talk about this kind of thing regularly with my conversations with Matt Fales and Thou Art That, and Mr. Kurt was just somebody I was discussing those with. I usually discuss it being conversational in nature in some sense, with people that are interested in that as a subject, and I guess that makes it easy to ignore. But it has already been going on, so I mean, part of the change in how I present it and focus on it on so much is because Gary acted like it's some out of left field. How dare you be talking to this other person? Which is a pet peeve of mine. I don't like people telling me who else to talk to. You know, I am not friends with that person. None of my friends may talk with them. I hate that. That is a bad personality trait, in my view. So it's like, oh, you didn't notice that this is a topic of mine? Okay, well, it is. And as a matter of fact, I think it's a very important topic. I'm going to save the question of does spirituality inform my general or ethical decision making, and I'll say yes, it does. But I'm going to save that question to describe how it does, and what I think the relationship is. It's is it direct? Um, well, I don't know. It's through a series of abstractions and what. Anyway, to go into that, I want to describe my analysis of morality and ethics. Okay, but as far as me assigning import or raising an import, it's already important, right? You look at society, right? It's already important. It's not me saying it's important. It has a huge impact and has had a huge impact on society, and we don't really understand what it is. So, yeah, I think probably everyone should master an understanding of it. And it's like, I'm not advocating that it has to be first, or certainly that it's the only thing. You master emotions one at a time. You don't just say master your feelings. How? Well, your feelings do one thing. Doesn't Size doesn't fit all. Every sense and feeling, in every space, every canvas that can exist, be it with color, sound, pain. These all have unique characteristics and somewhat unique meaning, and you can use analogies and metaphor from one feeling to another. Like, for example, I've been applying this metaphor of romantic love, that feeling. Um, you know, People have that feeling and they think nature's speaking to them. God has told them that is the one. Cupid shot an arrow, and they've thought all kinds of stuff and still do. Um, and you can't just say, "Oh, wait, that's just a feeling," and ignore it. You have to pay attention and learn how to and become the master of that. Basically, that uh, you were saying that that you seem that I seem to be uh, my rationalizing out of a deeper concern. All right, and I don't really know what to say about that, but I think, yeah, the deeper concern is having emotional health. And I don't think living in denial about an influential feeling that's like, look at the world, you know, it is going to help. And if that feeling has gone awry, you know, if hunger is gone awry and it's hurting your health, or if spirituality has been subverted to controlling the masses and is hurting our emotional health, then pretending that I'm promoting it is, you know, just denial. I mean, I'm looking at a social phenomenon, and it is important. Now, having said that, I also feel that it is of value. You know, my current thought actually, as a result of talking to you, is that when people were promoting, well, what about the feeling of awe? And I know I don't think it's the feeling of awe, but it might be the feeling of meaning, of taking meaning out of something. And, it might be the difference between using an equation to figure out a problem and sort of feeling there's a meaning to the equation itself rather than the problem that's being solved. Somewhere in there, people deduce meaning. Maybe it's related to that. I don't know. That's sort of a new aspect of this approach of mine, that it's occurred to me that, well, maybe it's just a feeling of meaning. And when you bring up coincidences and how it's just a coincidence, but it seems they often seem meaningful, um, that that would go in line with it being this feeling of meaning, and would also explain in this from the hunger analogy how it can fire when there's not really meaning, but there would be some sort of a personal meaning, and it would be all the more if somebody's finding something meaningful that isn't really meaningful or not in the way that they were thinking. They should probably pursue that and figure out why it's triggering their feeling of meaning, right? And I think this is true in the sense of the way a lot of people pursuing spiritual, pursuing the spiritual feeling, and trying to achieve it, how, they kind of go crazy, because they, like they fall in love with systems because they're beautiful, simple systems, or because they're an instruction manual that's supposed to tell you how to achieve, enlightenment. They're they see the meaning because of the simplicity, and that has an appeal, and so this meaning feeling is triggered. Guess what? There is meaning there, but it's about their own relationship to what they're looking for, right? So to look more carefully, to apply reason to that process is important, right? And this is what I said from the beginning before I made a big point about talking to everybody about it. But what I was saying to Mr. Kurt is, there's certain things that I think that can keep you grounded as you play with this fire that is your spiritual experiences and your desire to um, investigate that feeling or have that feeling or understand it. Um, is that, and they're basically rational and reasonable things. I presented natural philosophy as a way to do that. Why? Well, because natural philosophy is reasonable and rational, and if done properly, is humble. Because there is no book with the answers. Nature has those answers, and as far as I know, it has infinite detail. And if not infinite, might as well be infinite, compared to the size of the human brain, right? Um, so it's already going on, and I see a lot of people that I think are on kind of, likable spiritual paths sort of, you know, lose their way, and I hate to see that. And sometimes burn out or expend too much energy, or sell their house because they got the idea that the Bible means the world's ending on a particular date, or I. I, I have mostly probably motivated from a concern of those individuals. I think the world could be a better place if those people had, compasses for their exploration, right? And that would help them from certain kinds of avoidable traps without telling them what their destination is, because that's something I think they have to explore themselves. But maybe the more practical, justification is that look at the power of spirituality in the world and how corrupt it is. And you might say, "Oh yeah, it's corrupt. Stay away from that stuff." And I say, "No. If it's corrupt, it needs to be cleaned up, decorrupted, unencrypted." So, why the word spiritual is this thing about the extension, the set of things we call spiritual experiences. To me, that is always the starting point. In moral and ethical situations, you have a pre existing word, people are still trying to define. You look at the things that are in the extensions of those words, the examples, right? Sort of what in software we call a use case. And through analyzing those, you basically you're analyzing for the patterns in those to see if you can have, come up with some abstractions, some concepts that act like programs, word programs that pick out what is, you know, what should go in that set, and they help you throw things out that shouldn't be considered in that set, and they help you evolve your conception of that idea. But part of my perspective about natural philosophy is it always comes down to the so-called things that we categorize a particular way. And whenever we find ourselves saying, "Well, what does that word really mean?" You always have to go to those things. And if the set is kind of a jumble of a mess and some of those things don't belong, but they get put in there because of historical accident or whatever reason, um, well, that's what we're trying to master. So you look at that set, you come up with an abstraction, you go, "Look, this abstraction is real. I like it. That's what I want that set to mean. But look at these things are going to have to go." And so you get more, you get the evolution of technical terms, basically. You add a qualifier, you add a secondary set, subsets. There's a lot of ways to approach that. And I think it's a pretty general purpose method to go ahead and analyze that. So you are opposing reason versus emotion, but I don't think so. I mean, I'm we're always so a couple things. I first of all, reason is an emotional process, but it is sort of cleaned up. It submits itself to kind of double checking, and there's criteria on it that make it less irrational, um, potentially less irrational than uh, like what we might call just thinking with your heart, right? But reason is something you apply to your emotions. Or another way of putting it is that you're always reasoning inside this emotional context, sort of a bath, a sea of emotion, um, that you're swimming in, or or no, let's not limit you to swimming in the ocean, but just anywhere on Earth. It's the weather. You are in an emotional weather system, and and the thing is, though, you can control this weather. You can influence this weather. You can have an effect on your own desires and all the things that happen to you. You can figure out why, right, by applying reason to it. You can figure out why and the reasons for it, and then you can control that weather, and as a result, you can reason better, right? You can't deny your emotions and reason better. You have to deal with them. Um, so, I mean, you're picking up this idea that I'm going from feelings and not reasoning, therefore, because it's reason versus emotion. But what I'm actually doing is applying reason to a feeling. And I believe in doing that. I believe that's, the rational and emotional parts interacting. And, I think curiosity is a feeling. I think there's a feeling of eureka, of I've got a solution. Those are feelings, and those motivate reason and rationality. So we shouldn't pretend they're not feelings because we like the results. Meanwhile, love is a feeling because love stinks. I just look. We are reasoning about things mostly that resolve back to various emotions and feelings that we have. And the five senses are just five uh, kinds of perception we have that seem to correlate well with each other and with space, and that we've got a handle on the tangibility of. Theoretically, though, I don't think people do have that much of a handle on much other than vision. Um, but yeah, that's another thing. So what I'm working on really at the moment in the videos I'm making about it is the cognitive schema associated with spirituality, right? Because it already exists in the world. I'm using the word because there's a set of experiences called spiritual experiences. I've had some, other people have some, and I'm dealing with framing the question in terms of this feeling, and in taking a rational analysis of a set of experiences, meaning measuring experiences, seeing which things, like, why'd that get in there, that shouldn't belong, if this is the reason, how does that change the set. Doing this reasoning, I want to have a cognitive schema where we can reason about this topic in that way, rather than be confused, that it's all about religion. Just like people are confused that all religions are, like Christianity. And all, you know, like when we went to the West, and it's like, hi, Hindus, where's your Bible? We don't have a Bible. Okay, these are your Bible. You know, people still have projected that over there, um, because they were seeing it in the form of their own religion. And so, crazy cat. And right. So, uh, I have been saying that it's necessary to life, but I didn't say it's the only reason to live. I didn't say you could ignore other things. I think our emotions have to be in balance, and just like you need water and you need food, and some people would say you need uh, love, and you need all kinds of different food and nutrients. I think in a way it's a trivial statement on my part, because I think you really need emotional balance, and any emotion that you have recurrent, you as an individual need to find a good relationship with that in order to want to live. But where I am relying more on spirituality is this idea that maybe it's related to, or simply is, the feeling that you have of when you, wow, this is meaningful. And maybe some of the spiritual experiences we've identified as such is because we can't explain the meaning right away. We had a feeling of meaning we didn't know right away. I mean, when we see footsteps on the beach, and the meaning is that somebody walked there, or let's say two sets of footprints, and you're like, oh look, and one's this size, and it looks like somebody, a couple of people were walking together on the beach, you know and we know, oh, okay, so that's what that means. So we don't necessarily say that would be a spiritual experience. But when we see a coincidence, we don't know how or that they're really related, then that might seem like need a name, because we had the feeling of meaning, but we don't really have the rational explanation for what is really meant, right? So I think that the spiritual feeling might be very important, because of it providing a greater context of meaning to life overall, right? A meaning to our place, to how things fit together, to um, to how we deal with tragedy, to how we deal with success, and so I do think it has a particular importance. I think it's one of the more powerful things in the human experience. But also, it's just a matter of we need many things to survive, and healthy relationships with recurrent phenomena, recurrent emotions is definitely necessary for enjoying survival. Um, so I don't think I need a particular goal of an answer that I want to find. It's not like, well, I'm going to follow spirituality because then I'll find out about God. No, it's just a matter of this is a feeling we have. It's a phenomena that affects me, it affects the world. Other people's spirituality affects the world. So looking into it is part of natural philosophy. It doesn't really matter how nature turns out sometimes at the very bottom. Is it a dream? It's like this is a part of our experience, and there's plenty of problems and corruption in our official spiritual institutions, so needs to be understood better on the social level. On the individual level, I have found uh, that yeah, how I this is where I've got my sense of overall meaning, right? Why natural philosophy is important to me, why I think logical systems are so important to me, why um, it's how I have found meaning in the biggest structure in things beyond my own personal self, and beyond oh, there's a footprint, somebody was walking there. How I have like felt my connection to nature, how I felt that I'm a part of nature, how which has led to realizing that things in my brain are not metaphysical, they're part of nature as well. So, in my connection inward and out, and help me visualize things like how I am a colony of eukaryotic cells, how that might be possible. How could I have an individuable nature when clearly, there's an illusion to that because I'm this distributed creature that's made up of individual cells of a kind that also can live off of its own in the case of amoeba and protozoa. So, or paramecium rather. Um, and is what I meant to say. And so this kind of connection um, is visible to me through some of those experiences that I would class in as spiritual experiences because of the feeling of meaning I've had observing nature, observing ant colonies, thinking about conic sections, and thinking about how people's love for mathematics sometimes waited thousands of years to turn out to be really important to physics that they weren't even concerned with. And how does that happen? How do they see that meaning? And then, with for no practical benefit of historic note for 1,000 years or more, and then suddenly it becomes important, and it becomes very important also that those physicists, that the natural philosophers, Newton had access to the mathematics that was invented just for the love of somebody that saw some meaning in there. And Pythagoras was spiritual about math. Okay, that's why he did math so early, right? All right, mathematics was not originally expanded in the West from practical needs. Um, that part of mathematics, accounting, and for trading and stuff, didn't really get that sophisticated. It was the love of the beauty of math that really um, led to the most advanced mathematics, the earliest in Western history. Um, I liked your digression into the regular solids as feelings, and I did also understand that you're just using that also as an analogy, um, that there be some sort of formulaic form. But the thing is, um, we are humans, and it's knowing what the neurological system is that explains something. It doesn't. It's not. It's almost I mean that's good information, and it should give us some hints. But what we as humans really need is to understand the user interface that we have with our own brain and body. We need to understand how to interact with our feelings, how to, you know, guide ourselves to have new kinds of reactions, how to temper our feelings, how to re-educate them. And so, you know, I'm looking at this through an empirical way, and with reason and with measurement. Um, uh, uh, though, of course, in these kinds of things, they're so qualitative. You know, that measurement is really characterization, but you can't, you know, measurement as in comparing two things. So you can compare the intensity of the feeling, you compare the scope of what you were observing that you took spiritual meaning from, and so that counts as measurement. Um, and the idea is it's a philosophical thing where it's psychology from the inside. It's like, how do I have a relationship with this phenomenon, and finding out how, you know, the neurons produce it will be important, and perhaps it will have some elegant, you know, statement on of the simplicity level of F equals ma and E equals mc squared, you know, maybe. um, but and that'll help in creating something that has that emotion, if that is a goal. But that's not really my primary goal. I am more like wanting to find out, you know, what is the user interface. I have this thing, this brain and this emotional mind, and I want to master the interface of interacting with it. I always thought it was kind of odd how difficult it is to master. Why don't we just automatically know? And it's like, well, it's not that there was. I don't think that it was just that there was no evolutionary advantage insisting that we know. I think there's actually an evolutionary advantage of not knowing so much. But now I've evolved to the point where my curiosity is leading me to learn more about that, and everything's a matter of timing. Maybe that's because we're ready to know more, or I'm ready to know more, or maybe I'm just some weird outlier. Whatever. I want to know how the user interface to our emotions works, and there's some generalities, and there's a lot of uh, personally specific aspects to that. And I think in the case of spiritual feeling is a great example. Just like people are fall in love or are romantically attracted to different kinds of personalities as well as different physical traits, but to different kinds of personalities, and it's personal. I think spirituality and this finding of spiritual meaning in an experience is also very personal, and somebody should look closely at the specific experiences they have and not try to follow somebody else, you know, somebody else's. Like one of the most reliable things to have this feeling, and where I would say I most commonly have had it, is in nature. And I think that's kind of generalizable. A lot of people have that experience, but some people know. Some people in nature, you know, have a lot of fear. They don't like it, or the bug bites bother them, or, you know, maybe they have it in the library. They would need to look at their own experience to come to grips with their own emotional and embodied emotional self, right? They would have to look at those specifics. But there is also the social thing and the huge impact that spirituality, and specifically corrupt spirituality, has wrought on society, which make it worthwhile surveying the other people's experiences that they report as spiritual experiences, and doing some analysis on that, and why do they find that meaning in those experiences. So you know, when you say meaning, like, or coincidence is just a neuronal thing, it's like, well, here's a funny thing about those coincidences. um, you are the connection. You're the connection of things like that, between those things that you just happen to notice. A lot of things stream by your perceptions, and they don't stand out. It wouldn't, yeah, I saw that, but you didn't remember the next day. Oh, look, and that. So there actually probably is a reason that you've connected them, and it's not this metaphysical thing of that makes it not a coincidence. It's still a coincidence, but probably psychologically, for some reason, you were primed to notice that thing. So you're picking it out of your experience, your stream of experiences. You're picking it out, right? So it's a little window on your own subconscious. Why were you picking that out? So, I mean, in conclusion, basically, the way I take it is, in the postmodern situation, it's an absurdist thing. It's like we're looking for meaning in nature and we don't find it in nature. But it's not true that we don't find meaning. We just know it's not in nature itself, that we are part of that process, right? And it's similar to, okay, well, when you find love, it's not really in nature, it's in your relationship to nature, to some other person in the world in that case. And in the case of romantic love, I'm talking about, I think what we call love is actually many different kinds of appreciation. And so, I don't despair that meaning isn't sitting out there in the rocks. I don't despair that the meaning of this pencil in the world is to write things. It's like, no, we can use it as a pencil, right? I can use a piece of lead as a pencil, a big old lump of lead I can use as a pencil. Is it a pencil? Is it not a pencil? Does it have, oh, well, the meaning and the purpose, that's not in the thing. It's in a person's relationship to the thing, how they're using it and whatnot. Okay, this is good news about meaning and spirituality, right? And all of the emotions, is that we're looking for meaning. It seems like people need to feel there's some meaning in life for life to be worth living, and to live with a good attitude, have a good attitude, and want to survive and see one's own purpose. And the expectation of that it's in the pencil. Well, it's lucky it's not in the pencil, or we just have to be going to mine personal meaning like it was gold. And if you hit it in the Black Hills, great. If not, you're screwed. No, we can create meaning. So wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you can create meaning, and that's the meaning you need to survive. So that's good news, right? That's a lot better news than there being some limited supply of meaning that we have to fight over. No, we can create meaning for each other, share excess meaning, and you know, I think most people need that. Now, generally, I have been talking to people, like I say, that are on spiritual paths, and they start to see too much meaning everywhere, which tends towards, paranoia and mental reactions that are like believing in omens too much, taking coincidences too seriously, apophenia. Um, but that's a much more rare problem at the moment. And I think it's both sides are related to misunderstanding our experiences, our meaningful experiences, and specifically ones we take to have a spiritual meaning. So basically, meaning comes from your relationship to nature, I believe, and to understand that relationship is to apply reason to your emotion. And I think it's pretty clear that's what I'm doing in the case of the spiritual feeling and spiritual experiences. I am pinning down what I mean by those enough so that I can do statistical analysis and look at it through information theory. So, all right, cheers. I really appreciated your videos, by the way. It was great food for thought for me.